What's up, guys? Welcome to another video. Today we're going to be learning about loops in JavaScript and, really programming in general, because loops are like a really basic, fundamental, important part of programming. And what a loop does is it lets you loop through data or whatever you want it to, and it can basically do whatever you want. It can list out what you have, it can count for you. It can grab a hold of, like in JavaScript, you'll be using loops to grab a hold of different elements that might share the same class or ID to manipulate them. So this is a good example right here. So we have our loop syntax down here. This is called a for loop, and we'll go over for loops in great detail here in just a second. But you can see this person, they have a list or an array of cars, and they wanted to list out every car. So to do that, what they would have to do, remember we went over arrays and we went over like bracket notation. So this person, in this example, they listed everything out, every car in their array out by writing out every car manually in all these lines of code, which works. But a better way to do it would be to use something called a loop. And in this case, we call this one a for loop. And don't let the syntax scare you. You're going to be an expert in it by the end of the video. But essentially, this is the syntax, and it gets you, this little piece of code does the same thing as this code. So that's why loops, are really important. You can just see the difference in how much code you have to write, how much time that's going to save you already. And so I'm going to click on this, try it yourself, so you can see. Again, this person had an array here of cars, and this is on W3 Schools. So they had an array of cars, and they wanted to list every car out that they had in their array. And instead of writing them all out, like on the last screen, they inserted that data into a loop and used a variable, and then they were able to list it all out with just one block of code. Okay? So again, loops are really important. It might be hard to understand why as a beginner. I struggled with loops for a while, until I started building like real projects, and then it became apparent when I needed to use them and why. So that might, if you're not 100% on like why loops are important by the end of this video, just know that that'll come with time. Okay, like don't worry about it, don't overthink it, don't let it keep you up at night. But anyway, let's go into our JavaScript course files. Let's write some loops, and we'll do a couple of actual like cool stuff with them. So I'm going to go to my JavaScript course files, and I'm going to create a new file called 12-loops.html. And get our boilerplate code in here. I'll name the document JS loops, and write our script tags. Okay. And I'm going to copy in a couple of notes here that you can copy down yourself. So you just want to let yourself know, like put this in your file so you can come back to it. Loops in JavaScript and programming in general allow you to run a set of instructions that is repeated until a specific goal or condition is reached. Loops allow you to run one block of code instead of writing several lines of code to achieve the same outcome. Okay, and we went over that now. It's kind of like functions, how functions let us run code without having to write the same thing over and over again. Loops do the same thing in a different way, pretty much. So let's go ahead and go over the basic syntax of a for loop. All right, so I'm just gonna paste this here. So it takes a while to type that out. So I'll pause the video and copy this down, okay? But you have we've got the start. So we have for, the keyword for, and then parentheses. And then we have start, so you set a variable. And the variable can be named anything that you want, okay? Anything at all. Just set a variable, name it, give it a value. It's usually going to be 1. And then the second part, so that's your start. And then you tell your variable that you created, which is here now, you list it out again, and you give it a finishing point. So in this for loop, we want to count from 1 to 11. So we started our variable count at the number 1. Then we said we wanted the count to finish at 11. So we should actually put an equal here. And I'll show you why that's important in a second when we run this. And then we again listed out count, and we said plus equals 1. And that means step size. How many numbers do you want to count up at a time? You can count up by 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 10 at a time. Whatever number you put in here is the steps it's going to take. So we just want to count by 1, okay? So again, don't let all this freak you out. Just know that this is what it means, okay? And then we're console logged count. So let's see if that actually looks like in the console. So I'm going to minimize this, and we'll make this document go live in our browser. And then let's right-click inspect and hit console. And as you can see, so our loop here, we ran it. We let console logged loop, or the variable count. And look what happened. It actually counted to 11. See? Pretty cool. So the reason I had to put the equal sign there, because look what happens if I don't do that. I'll take away the equal sign, and I'll actually stop just shy of 11, and it'll only go to 10. So if you're counting for whatever reason, if you're ever using a loop just to count, which like honestly in practical project building you're not going to be doing, but if it is, you either have to make the number 1 bigger than where you want to go to end on whatever. So if we want to end on 11, you have to say if it's less than 12, or you can put the number you want to stop on and just put your equal sign there. Okay, there you go. Same thing. I usually use the equal sign because it makes more logical sense. Like, hey, if it's less than or equal to 11, stop at 11. That makes sense to me. Remember, we learned about these. These are the comparison operators that we learned about in the if-else statements video. If you don't know what all this is, and this is confusing, you go back and watch the if-else video, and we go over all these symbols. But yeah, so that's how you would count to 11. And again, we can count to whatever we want. Like, I could make this 100 if I wanted to. And we can count by 1. Save it. And look, pretty cool. So we instantly counted to 100 and logged it out to the console. So I'm going to make that go back to 11. So again, just study this, guys. This is where you start, make a variable, make it equal to whatever you want. It's usually going to be 1. Where you want to finish. And what step size, how many you want to count up by. Okay? So that's the basic syntax for a variable. So let's do another one. This time let's count to 100 by 10. 10 at a time instead of 1 at a time. So let's do a for loop. So let's say for, and I'll say let, and I'll just name my variable x. Again, you can name your variable whatever you want. So I'll say let x equals 10. We'll start at 10. And then we'll say as long as x is less than or equal to 100, so where we want to go is 100. And then we want to count by 10. So we're going to say x plus equal 10, because we want to count by 10. And then make our brackets, and we'll say console.log. And we'll say we want to log out what? We want to log out x. Okay? Say x, save. Look. So right here is where it starts. This is our other one. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. It worked. All right. So that's, in that case, we didn't go up by 1. We went up by 10, which you can do. It's all up to you. I'm going to try a little challenge now. That'll be really similar to what we just did. So I want you to create a for loop that counts from 1 to 20. Okay. So 1 to 20 just by 1. Look at the examples above and check your syntax. So follow what we did, guys. Don't let this freak you out. I know this might be a little scary, but you got to do this on your own. So try one on your own. Go ahead and pause the video. If you get stuck, look up here. Just copy our syntax, okay? So again, we want to go from 1 to 20. Log it out to the console, all right? Good luck. All right, hopefully that wasn't too difficult. If it was, don't worry about it. Again, like I always tell you guys, I had a lot of trouble learning all this stuff when I was brand new. I'm not a natural programmer at all. But if I can figure it out, you can probably figure it out, right? So let's do this. I'll say for let, and I'll use I as my variable name. And that's really common, guys. When you look up like example code for loops on like Stack Overflow or any other website where they give you loop examples, the default variable name is usually I for some reason. I don't know why. It's just like a programming thing, but pretty much every learning example you see for loops is going to have I as the variable. So just be aware of that. Again, you can name your variables whatever you want. So we have I equals 0, and then we want to go up to 20. So we're going to say as long as I is less than or equal to 20. And then we'll say I plus equals 1. Okay. And then we'll say console.log. And we want to do I. And let's see here. And it looks like it worked. So we have right here 1 all the way up to 20. So hopefully you're able to do that. If not, that's okay. Don't worry. Do not beat yourself up over it. Just come back to these examples and try another one. Pause the video and try another one on your own until you get the hang of it, okay? I just want to point out one more thing to you. See this I plus equals 1? That's one way to do it. You might also see people write out like this when they just want to increment by 1. They might just say I plus plus, and that means the same thing. That means you just want to count up by 1 every time. Okay? So again, that's common syntax. You'll see either 1 plus equals or plus plus. Usually when you're just incrementing up by 1, you'll see this a lot, and this is really common. But if somebody's actually going to log out numbers and they want to do it in certain steps, they'll use the plus equals and then however many they want to count up by. So you'll see both, guys. Just know that plus plus means plus equals 1, and it's the same thing as this, okay? So there is one more thing that I wanted to go over with you that you may have already discovered before we started counting, and that is if you make a mistake somewhere and you accidentally tell your computer to like infinitely count and you don't give it a place to stop, you want to be careful because you'll see like it'll start counting like to infinity in your console if you make a syntax error, and it could actually like freeze or crash your computer, or at least crash the browser, especially if you have like a cheaper computer. And there's no problem with having like a cheap computer. We all start somewhere. But I noticed like when I first learned how to code on my crappy little laptop that I had, like an old HP laptop that was 10 years old. It had like it would crash out if I counted like up to like in the thousands or high thousands. It would like really struggle. I'm currently on like a Mac M1 chip, and those are like amazing. Like I've made mistakes on this computer. Like I actually made a mistake creating this lesson, and I counted to like infinity, and it kept going up, dude. I was in like millions, and my computer still didn't freeze, and the browser didn't crash. So kind of just shows like how powerful this thing actually is compared to what I used to use. But yeah, just be careful, guys. You might have already discovered that if you've made an error, but just want to throw that out there. Let's go ahead now and loop through an array. So this is more of like a practical application of loops. And remember, last lesson was actually arrays. So by combining arrays and loops, you can actually do some really powerful stuff. So let's go ahead and do something with that. So let's make a comment and say looping through an array. And let's go ahead and create an array, kind of like if you watched our last lesson, we had a messages array. So I'm going to make some messages here. Pretend like this is like a text application on your phone or something. So let's just create some messaging here. Let's say, hey, how are you? And then the next person responds, I'm great. Thank you. Or I'm great. I'll say I'm great. Thanks. How about you? And then this person will say, all good. Working on some new projects. Maybe there are two like developers talking to each other. And then the other one says, same here. And that'll be the end. So we got some messages here. Conversation between a couple of developers. And now what we want to do is we want to loop this conversation. We want to use a for loop to log everything out. Instead of using our bracket notation, we'll just use a loop to loop over this once and list the whole conversation out in our console. So let's say for let, and I'll name my variable message because we want to get every message of the messages. And this is just my style of writing loops. A lot of people will always use like I or just like random letters to write out loops, but I like my variable names with loops to like be relatable to what I'm actually trying to do. So I'll say let message, and then we'll say as long as message is less than, and this is a new property here, we're going to say messages dot length. So that dot length property is saying instead of like using a number here, we're actually going to use dot length because that little piece of code means I want you to keep looping through messages for the entirety of how long it is. So dot length. So however many times it takes to get every message out, that's how long I want you to go. That's what dot length means. And then we'll say message plus plus. Remember, it's the same thing as plus equals 1. It's all the same. I'm going to use plus plus. And then I'm going to say console dot log. And then we want to log out messages. And then in brackets, we want to put our variable of message and save. And we have a syntax error. Oh, forgot to put my less than. Okay. And we forgot to put our equals 0 here. I'm sorry, guys. There we go. So remember, we've got to start it at 0 so that it knows that it can loop through. So we save this here, and now we have our messages all looped out here. So remember in our arrays lesson, I think we did something similar. But oh no, you know what we did is we used shift and unshift, but we used bracket notation to like actually pick out pieces of data that we wanted, and we can actually use a loop to get everything at once. Okay, so we'll do one last thing here, and I want you to create a for loop that logs out all of the numbers in the array, and remember to use dot length. So I'm going to give you an array. I'm going to give you this numbers array. And just like we did up here, I want you to go ahead and create a for loop that's going to loop through every number here and then display it in the console. Again, look up here, look at the syntax, follow what I did, and just create your own variable name and do whatever else you have to do here to make that happen, okay? Good luck. All right, hopefully that wasn't too difficult. If it is, again, don't worry about it. So let's do this together. Let's say for, then we'll say let, and we'll say number equals 0. So I'll name my variable number. Then we'll say as long as number is less than numbers dot length, and then we'll say number plus plus. All right, put our curly braces, and then we'll log it out. Say console dot log, and we'll say numbers, and then in brackets we'll put number and save. And there we go. Got 7, 3, 9, 23, and 2. So if you're able to do that, congratulations, awesome job. And if not, no worries. You can always go back after this video, or right now you can pause and try a different one. Just make another array up and try to log it out, okay? So I want to finish up here. Let's just do something a little more practical that you might actually do in a real project. And that's actually render data out using a loop and an array and actually rendering it out onto the screen for the user to see. So let's say, and you can just follow along with me here because I'm going to do some stuff we haven't gone over yet. So I'll say rendering data to the user using array, using an array and loop. Okay. So let's go ahead and say let, and I'll have a variable called sentence, and we're actually going to make this my array, so it'll be an array called sentence, and I'll say hello, my name is and we'll say practical web, or we'll just put it all in one. We'll say practical web dev. All right, so we have this sentence here, and I want to render this out to the actual screen here using JavaScript. So let me go ahead up here in my HTML. I'm going to make a paragraph. I'm going to give it an ID of greeting L. Okay, so now I have a paragraph here. Can't see it because I haven't put any text in it, but it's here. And I'm going to go back down here, and I'm going to grab onto that. I'm going to say let greeting L. Let's see, greeting L equals document.get element by ID greeting L. And then I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to create a for loop that loops through this and then uses greeting L to render it out onto the screen. So I'm going to say for let, and I'll just say s equals 0. So s for sentence. Say as long as s is less than sentence dot length. We'll just say s plus plus. And now we're going to say greeting L. Let's scroll down to our paragraph, and we'll say dot text content plus equals. We want a space in between our words, and then plus sentence brackets s. Save. And look at that. Hello, my name is Practical Web Dev. So this is a really practical use case here when you're actually going to render data out to the screen using an array and a loop. This is something that you'll actually be doing in projects. And if you ever learn back-end programming like PHP, this is how you get data from a database in the back end, and you actually put it on the screen. You'll loop through the database with not with JavaScript but PHP, and it's the same syntax, and that's how you'll get stuff out on the screen from a database. And that's that's how full stack web development works. But that's obviously not in the scope of the video, but I just want to get kind of paint the big picture for you guys of why all this stuff is important to learn. Okay. So before we go, guys, I just want to make you aware that we learned for loops, and there actually is other types of loops. So around W3 schools, and there's other loops with kind of different syntaxes that do different stuff. So this would be a for in loop. This is used to loop through objects, which we haven't learned yet, but we'll get there. Then there's for of loops, and there's do while loops or while loops. And they all have a little different syntax, but at the end, they all do pretty much the same thing, and they loop through data and present it. And which loop you use will depend on what you're trying to loop through. So if you're trying to loop through an object, you'll probably use a for in loop. If you're just looping through an array, you'll use a for loop, which is most of what you'll do. And then as you build projects and you learn, you'll find out what loop you need to use when you get to a certain problem by Googling it around and figuring it out. But just know that there's other loops out there, and you'll learn them, later on. But we used a for loop because those are the most common and they're the easiest to learn. So just be aware of that, guys. I do want to thank you so much for watching the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.